Welcome friends. In this video we're going to take our simple interface, make it draggable, droppable, and make its position savable between page loads. Okay, so we're going to use jQuery to accomplish that. So first go back to source view for a second, and at the top we need a reference. So from the right side in the Solution Explorer you should have jQuery UI, and then you can click on it to open it, you can look through it. Remember, jQuery is nothing but just a library of JavaScript functions. That's all it is, okay? Whether it's the UI one or the regular jQuery, notice on the right side in the Solution Explorer, it ends in .js, right? In JS, JavaScript. That's all it is. So drag a reference into the head section here. So for the UI 1.12.1 and then .js for JavaScript. So that's the first step. Now, to actually make use of jQuery, remember, you want to make the page item there draggable, droppable, and the position of it savable between page loads. So I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to add the first basic line. I know in the previous video I said comment out that bit of jQuery that we did. I've just completely removed that same bit. I just got rid of it completely. I'm beginning from scratch on the bottom of the page. And again, I put everything on the bottom because this helps to ensure that everything is loaded and there aren't any weird missing errors or something like that. So I'm going to say this script, and then I will say function, and then the next stage, it looks like this. Remember, this simply means jQuery. That's what the dollar symbol represents. Okay. You might ask, naturally enough, how do I know that? How do I know any of these things? Well, it's experimentation, and then also take a look. Another thing that you can do is on the right side, click on jQuery 1.12.4.js. That's good enough. And then scroll to the bottom, the entire library of functions. And where is that? You see this here? Expose jQuery and $symbol identifiers. With some, highly specific comments there. But for our purposes, notice that window dot the dollar symbol. So basically the dollar symbol, as you can see, jQuery. That's how I know. That's it, you see? Let me close that. Next stage here, I'm going to say the following. $symbol, I'm going to choose our div. The div, remember, has an ID of main. So hash mark and then main. You want to choose it. That's what that means. The jQuery select the main div, or the div with the ID of main, and then make it draggable. So I'm going to say draggable like that. That's a function that allows you to drag elements around the page. So first, all we are doing is taking the div with the ID of main and making it draggable using jQuery. If you go to the top, remember, or if you don't have it, you should make sure that you do. The div ID here is set to main. That's the div that contains all the things that we have placed inside it. Give this a build, make sure it takes, and let's preview this one time. So let me see. I think I have my IIS open, Express that is. Yes, I do. So I'm just going to launch it through IIS Express from the taskbar on the bottom. As you know, launching it the other way can take forever and ever. All right, so first of all, is it draggable? It is. So it's a stage in a certain direction. But the problem is, of course, if we interact with it, you see it snaps back to its original position where it first loads. All right, that's a problem. We need to fix that. Well, we have identified it as a problem in the context of our lesson. That's not what we want. Now, to motivate the next step, take a look. Right-click and go over to Inspect in Chrome. And under Inspect in Chrome, let me pull this over. Go over to where it says Application. Let's see, can I fit all of it? I doubt it, but anyway, so here go over to where it says Application. And now, we should see something like this. And then go over to this item called Local Storage. This is local storage. You see this? This is a nice feature where you can store items and then you can retrieve them and manipulate them using jQuery and so on. And notice that these things are stored in a specific form. You have a key, which is something called a div in this case. I made that up. That's just a key we make up. That can say anything you want it to say. It doesn't have to say div. And for the value, it's a specific kind of thing that says top and then colon and some number, and then left colon some number. Okay, so now it's clear, right? What you want to do is clear storage up above, but then you have to be careful. Scroll down, and then at the bottom it says clear site data. All right, try that. And now go back to here, and notice that the key and value have been cleared from the browser. So again, clear storage, and then you got to scroll down. Well, in my case, I do because I made everything big so it's easy to see. And I said clear site data. And now it's gone from local storage. Okay? All right, we're going to make use of this. I want you to be aware that it exists, and now let's make use of it as follows. Close this, and let's go down to the bottom of the page again. And remember that this part shifts things around for us. We can make things draggable. So let me just add this. I'm going to put the dollar symbol next. I'm going to say window. That means grab the window, that's all. And then you're going to say on. That's a function. And I'm going to say this between single quotes. Before unload, and then comma, and then function. So we're going to add one more function that runs right before the window unloads, essentially, okay? All right, so whenever you deal with the function, make sure you put curly braces, as I am doing here. So that looks as shown. And then terminate that with a semicolon. So what is this going to do? Right before we unload, we want to save the position of the object, correct? That's our objective here. So to accomplish that, you will type this. Variable POS. So var, that simply means making a variable. POS is the name of it. You may want to use a different name than POS, like position or something, right? Common name, position. And I will say equals, and then you're going to get a reference using jQuery to the main element, right? To the div with the ID main. And you're going to get its position using the position function as shown here. So remember, this means simply jQuery get the reference to the main div and then get its position and save it to the POS variable. And that's useful because at the next stage now, we can save to local storage as follows. Type local storage. And you might be saying, well, how do I know these things exist? Experimentation, and that's it. You just experiment, see what exists, what doesn't, and how to make use of it. So local storage exists, and I'm going to say dot set item. That's a function that it has. When you hover your mouse over it, it says key string and data string and then colon void. What that means is the first entry has to be the key. Remember, the key goes into the key column that I showed you in Chrome under local storage. There are two columns. One is key, and the other one's like the data after that. So that's what it is saying here. Key colon string. You can make up a name, in other words. I'm going to say here div. And the next stage, it says data colon string. It's even bolded for us, right, to indicate we're going to the options. Notice the bolding kind of goes together, through the tooltip. It's kind of nice. And it says data colon string. So what that means is it needs a string, something in a string format. The way to do that is as follows. I'm going to take JSON, that is JavaScript object notation, and it says an intrinsic object that provides functions to convert JavaScript values to and from the JavaScript object notation format. JSON, JavaScript object notation. And I'm going to say here that's stringify. Stringify, when you look at it, says converts a JavaScript value to a JavaScript object notation string. So I'm using that, and I know that I should use it because when I look at the tooltip that shows for set item, it says data colon string, and that's something else. That's why I'm using stringify. I'm going to say here the following. I will say now POS. So all we are doing is basically making the position into a string, and then that's going to be saved into local storage. You're going to have an item named div on one column. That's the key. And then in the data column, you're going to have the position of the div. The question, of course, is this enough to actually make the page draggable? Yes. Is it enough to now save the position? Well, let's take a look. So build this. And let's see what happens. We got to launch it. All right, so it's come up. That's good. We can move it. That's good. Let's see. Check to show calendar. And it pops back to its place again. So again, let me just move it. Right click and go over to inspect. And then go over to application. And then go over to localhost. And there it is. You see that? So you've got the div with the key value as shown. But then when you do that, You see, it kind of jumps back to its original location. So I'm going to save this, take a look, close that. And the next stage, we understand that we are saving, but we're not making full use of it to restore the position. As an example of what you can do next is this, take a look. I'm going to say var top left, and I'm using top left as the variable because remember in local storage it says top colon some number, and there's another one that says left colon some number. That's why I'm calling it top left, because that is what I'm getting. So I'm going to say top left here equals, and then I will say again JSON dot, and then I will say parse. Now, look at the parse function. It says converts a JavaScript object notation string into an object. Well, remember that stringify saves it as a JSON string into local storage essentially using set item. So then parse reverses that step. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to say the following. I'm going to say local storage. Let me just not do that. Local storage. And then I'm going to say here the following, get item, and then you enter the key because it says get item key colon string. So the key is coming from local storage. So I'm going to say div. That's where it's coming from, okay? So what this is saying in simple English is, of course, using local storage, first get the item under the div key. Once you've got that, you hit it with json.parse, which converts it into an object. And then once you have it in that form, you're close. The last stage really is this one. Take a look. Type here $symbol and then main, and then type .css and top left. So what am I doing here? This is saying the following. Grab the main div and then set its CSS and then top left. So the top and the left position of the div retrieved from local storage. That's what it's doing for us, okay? Now, let's save this all. Hopefully I've typed everything correctly. Let me just double check. Draggable, correct. Local storage get item div, correct. Top left. Before unload function. Main position, local storage div, JSON stringify, correct. Good. So let's run this one time. So make sure you build it. All right, let's see how far this takes us. Launch it in IIS Express. Give it a second to come up. And all right, we have this object. All right, I'm going to click here. Well, the good news is that notice it didn't snap back, but there's still a problem. That's a bit subtle. Take a look. As I click, you see what's happening here? See how it's kind of drifting down the page? Right, every time I interact with it, it kind of drifts down the page a little again and again and again. See that? So obviously that has to be fixed. I don't think you want it that way. You know, even if I reload the page, let's see. I'm reloading the page using the browser little arrow, that curved arrow that is. And it's also drifting down a little. No good. So I'm going to close this. And that fix is you can do as follows. Go up to the top and just write on a div. Where is that? On the div here. Add a bit of styling information. Just type style and then position absolute. You want to kind of cure the drifting problem. So let's see. I'm going to build this. Give it a second here. Make sure it builds and succeeds. Let's reload it. IIS Express. You want to get rid of that weird drift of the object across the page down the middle. All right, so let's just check it. So when I do this, it doesn't seem to be drifting anymore. And I know otherwise the little checkbox, right, would be moving away from the mouse, but it's not. It's staying fixed in one place. You see? All right, let's see what happens when I reload the page. That counts too. You have to investigate each thing individually because sometimes it's... All right, I don't see any drift occurring anymore as I reload the page. The only thing is that I personally don't like is that when you reload this object, take a look. You see how it seems to like very quickly move away from its default location to this location? You see that? Right? It gets ghosted. It gets kind of ghostly there for a second and it moves into this position. You see? It shouldn't really be having that effect. But I'm going to leave it at this. Good enough for us. Another thing that I want to point out this application is this one. Take a look. Because if you click on edit, remember this is going through the grid view now. Because it's going through the grid view, you can enter stuff like this, which is not in the format of a valid email. You can click update. And now you can enter emails like this that are not valid anymore. You see? I hope you see that. So you should take the step of figuring out how to configure the fields in the grid view so they don't allow you to have that. So an example, just as for here, you can have something that says must enter email or must enter valid email. The same thing should apply down below. You should be able to do a basic validation, and that's a puzzle for you to try to figure out. How do you fix those fields to make that happen? In the grid view, not in the text boxes. All right, so the next stage, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the project with that correction applied to the grid view text boxes, not the text boxes above, but to the grid view. I'm going to put that on the lesson resources to get it zipped up. I'll make the change. You can check it out later and for yourself. I want to see whether when we do this now, when we transfer it, take a look whether this still works. So by transfer, I mean we're going to take it and put it on IIS, the regular full version of the server. All right, so I'm going to open this up here. Make sure you build it again. Okay, so right click and open up the folder that contains this project. Okay. Take these files, so Control A, Control C, and remember we learned about the full version of IIS. So on our C drive, we should have made a folder called the data entry site. Okay, click into it and just overwrite all of these files. So hit Control V. Okay, replace the files in the destination, correct. Good. And now let's take a look. So go into IIS. We should have our files here. So here we have data entry, the site. Right click and then go over to manage website and then browse. So what we want to confirm is that everything that we have done that's visible from IIS Express is also visible from IIS. Let's see what happens here. Give it a second to load. Okay, and notice that it opens up in this location pretty much where we left it off. But the key is, will it drift? Okay, so it doesn't appear to be drifting because otherwise the little checkbox would be moving away from the mouse. So that's good. Okay, let's see, let's reload it. That's good. Make a mental note, say I'm going to leave it over here in the corner on the bottom. Make a note of that position, a mental note. I'm going to shut down the page. Okay, and then relaunch it one more time. So right click data entry, manage website, browse. Give it a second here to come up. And notice that it does come up where we left it off. So again, remember your job kind of is to figure out how to fix the problem with being able to input stuff like that into the email field through the grid view. You should be able to apply some kind of validation even to a grid view. And the reason again is that remember, though we call it a grid view, you can make these fields here into editable items. And then you should be able to apply validators to each one. Because in reality, when you click edit, I mean, what is that really? That's just a text box, isn't it? So you should be able to validate the input there, just as you can for regular text boxes up above. Let me update that. And it gets restored nicely. Okay, so I'm going to close this. And that is it for this one. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.